It used to be thought that eczema was a condition that mostly affects white and Caucasian individuals, but more and more studies demonstrate that eczema shows higher prevalence in skin of color individuals. But despite experiencing higher incidence of eczema, skin of color individuals are still underrepresented in clinical trials. It's very important that you take the time to identify your potential triggers. Depending on the level of exposure to the trigger, it may causes all these rashes and all these symptoms.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Skin Goals. I'm your host, Lisa Avalos.
Hey, and I'm Kelly Sittler. And today we're diving into a topic that affects so many, eczema, especially those with darker skin tones. And to take us through, we have an incredible expert with us today. Again, here with us again, Dr. Hawasatu Dumbuya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're so excited to actually deep dive into your specialty.
Same here. Again, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so, all right. So Dr. Hawasatu Dumbuya, PhD, right? Can you take us into your title a little bit? And what do you do exactly at L'Oreal?
Yeah, sure. So my official title is Director of Clinical Research and Medical Affairs for La Roche-Posay at L'Oreal USA. My training, I was actually trained as a cell biologist, but I have expertise in clinical research for skincare product evaluation. And I also oversee scientific communications and publications for La Roche-Posay at L'Oreal USA.
Along those lines, give us a little bit about your day-to-day.
It's complex, but it's combining all my passions into one role. I'm very passionate about clinical research and innovation, so bringing forth new knowledge. But I'm also very passionate about making the work that we do or the research that we do translatable to the audience, whether it's to the doctors or to the consumers. Yeah. So my work from a day-to-day basis, I go from either initiating a new project, a new clinical project. So it's a lot of reading, understanding what has to be done in the field, where are the opportunities and gaps for our company, for our brand, and for our division. And then I go from monitoring an ongoing clinical project. So it's really about looking at trends, what is going up, what is going down, or what stays the same, and really looking at what does the data says about the product that we're evaluating. And then the last piece of my day-to-day is all related to scientific communication. So once we have the clinical study being completed, we have the results, we understand what they mean, where could we potentially use this data to educate on the products? Is it a conference? Is it a publication? Is it a podcast like we're doing right now? So that's the last piece of my day-to-day. So I always go from initiating a project, monitoring a project, and or building out the scientific communication plan.
Yeah, I love that. And today we're going to focus on eczema, which is one piece of one of your projects, right? And I'm just so curious, what drew you into focusing on the impact of eczema, specifically for those who have skin color?
It's a great question. So we know that eczema is a skin condition that is common in young children, but can occur at any age. Historically, it used to be thought that eczema was a condition that mostly affects white and Caucasian individuals, but more and more studies demonstrate that eczema shows higher prevalence in skin of color individuals, so meaning in individuals with higher levels of melanin in their skin. But despite experiencing higher incidence of eczema, skin of color individuals are still underrepresented in clinical trials. So that's what really drew our attention to eczema and focusing on skin of color, because we at La Roche-Posay wanted to bring forth new clinical knowledge, but also continue to raise awareness on eczema in skin of color.
We love that. And we're so excited that we as a company are taking the steps to really research all skin types, all skin colors. So my first question about that is, what is eczema?
So great question. It's a very common question that we also get quite often. And I also had to educate myself on this before the project. So eczema is a skin condition that causes dry skin, itchy skin, but also inflamed patches of skin. So that's what eczema is considered to be. And there are several triggers or causes that can lead to eczema, but in the field, there are three most common accepted causes. First, it's your immune system. So your immune system overreacts and it makes your skin more sensitive to the environment. Second, your genes, so your predisposition on experiencing eczema based on your family history. And the third is the environment. So depending on your environments, whether you have hot weather, cold weather, chemicals, irritants, all these can also lead to you having eczema.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So my mother had eczema and I have dry skin. What are the differences between dry skin individuals and individuals with eczema?
So dry skin is a very, very common skin condition, and it happens when your skin loses its water and oil content, which leads to your skin having a lack of hydration and moisture retention. And it can be caused, again, by the environment. If you have a hot weather, cold weather, it can also be caused by certain chemicals. But all of this really leads to your skin losing its water retaining capability and its oil. So that's one of the most very common skin condition, but that's actually a condition that can be caused by a medical condition such as eczema. So eczema is a different skin condition. Well, dry skin can be one of the symptoms of eczema. So that's the difference between the two.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. So with eczema, what makes eczema different for people with darker skin tones?
The most important thing is to remember that depending on your natural skin tones, eczema will show up very differently. So for example, someone with a darker skin complexion, just like mine, an eczema patch on my skin can sometimes look either brown, purple, gray, and even sometimes metallic looking because of the excessive scaling. While on the lighter skin tones, most of the eczema patches tends to look as pink, purple, or even red. So it's very important to take into account the natural skin tone and just anticipate that it may look differently depending on the levels of melanin that your skin has. Because gray, metallic versus pink or red, very, very different, right? So that's important to remember.
It's so important to understand the differences because then, you can recognize it. So, yeah.
Because sometimes people might be suffering with the impacts of eczema and not know that they have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't know what it looks like.
Exactly. There's quite a few studies that suggest that because of the different clinical presentations of the disease, depending on the natural skin tone, that eczema may be undercounted or misdiagnosed. So I absolutely agree with both of your points.
Along these lines, there's been a lot of talk, and I know you've kind of mentioned this earlier a little bit, maybe, a lot of talk about the role of the skin barrier, right? How does that relate to eczema? I know you're, saying as some of the causes, it's just, made me think of that, the skin barrier.
Yeah. So good question. So the skin barrier the skin barrier in our skin is located at the very, very top layer of our skin called the stratum corneum, and whose overall function is to protect our internal organs against the external aggressors. When the skin barrier is compromised or weakened, it allows the skin, or it leads to the skin being less able to protect our internal organs against the external aggressors, which can be certain chemicals, irritants, and allergens. When you have a strong, healthy skin barrier, you are less likely to let things out and also to experience the symptoms that we discussed. So when you think about the skin barrier, it plays an important role in eczema because the stronger the skin barrier, the less likelihood you are to experience dryness and itchiness and so on, because your skin is able to protect itself against irritants.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It also makes me think of even pollution is high, but having a strong skin barrier is important. And we've talked about antioxidants before, and we'll bring them back to you guys soon. But I'm sure all that has to do with your skin barrier.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do have a question about managing eczema. So what can people do about eczema and how to manage it, especially if you have skin of color?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think my first advice, I have two pieces of advice. My first advice will be to avoid anything that causes anything that are harsh to your skin. First advice. So it can be perfumes, detergents, different type of skincare or hair care, anything that interacts with your skin and is harsh to your skin. So you want to avoid that. Once you avoid it, you want to continue to be using or start using gentle cleansers and gentle moisturizers, because now we know there's a lot of ingredients that provides skin barrier support. The second advice that I will say, whether you're skin of color or not, it's very important that you take the time to identify your potential triggers. Because depending on your exposure, depending on the level of exposure to the trigger, it may causes all these rashes and all these symptoms that we discussed earlier. So spend some time to identify what are my triggers when I have a flare-up. Is it food? Sometimes spicy food can actually lead to a flare-up. Is it a certain perfume? Is it a certain product or a detergent? Is it the weather? So be familiar with the type of trigger that may lead to you experiencing eczema or flare-ups and try to avoid it if possible. But using gentle cleansers and moisturizers can also help manage some of the symptoms and the disease severity over time.
That makes sense. I almost feel like I want to journal now. What was I doing that day? Like when I'm obviously having, or that week or something.
I think it's a very good point. Like journaling, I think it's a great point to do that introspect on what happened or what is happening, how I'm feeling. And it's true that we know that stress can be a trigger, right? For pimples, for example, especially for me. But I think it's a great way to try to monitor what is happening with you and how you're feeling, and also how it shows up on your skin.
And you can also share the journal with your doctor when you're going to see, and understand, like, if confirm, right? Like what you actually have. But like, are there any ingredients or products that you actually would recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of research now on what type of ingredients can provide support to the skin barrier, because we recognize the importance of having a healthier and stronger skin barrier to maintain a healthier skin and to avoid some of the symptoms that we talked about related to eczema. So ingredients, you want to look at maybe products that contains shea butter, niacinamide, glycerin, as well as ceramides.
And it sounds like consistency. I mean, like, because like that's what, when you think about, like, it's like every day,
maybe even twice a
day, like just applying your moisturizer. Like I noticed even myself for having dry skin, like if I'm consistent, my skin definitely looks better.
Consistency is key, right? Not waiting until you have a flare up.
Yeah.
Recognizing when you do have a flare up and journaling or taking track over note of what is causing it. But hopefully your consistent behavior of gentle cleansing and moisturizing helps with decreasing those flare-ups.
Absolutely. And there's actually quite a lot of research suggesting that, indicating that the more consistent you are with your skincare and any other treatments, the longer you can stay away from experiencing flare-ups, or when the time that you experience flare-ups is shortened. So the recommendation, it is twice a day, morning and evening, especially during the winters. For me, I apply twice a day because I do have severe dry skin. And now it's cold weather. So my record would be twice a day, if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in your research, Dr. Dumbuya, PhD, I do have a question about xerosis, which is extremely dry skin. What is xerosis? Because you did compare that in one of your projects with, not compared it, but you spoke about it with also eczema and then extreme dry skin. What is xerosis?
Yes. So xerosis, it's actually the medical term for severe dry skin. If you experience xerosis or severe dry skin, it means that your skin has lost the ability to retain hydration and moisturization. And it is caused by a loss of water and oil in your skin. And in our clinical research project, we wanted to look at both xerosis, which is severe dry skin, but also eczema in diverse patients, because we know that the experiences in the symptoms might be different. And we wanted to evaluate the efficacy of our gentle cleansers and moisturizer over time. But that is the difference between the two, and why we wanted to evaluate the products on both of the skin conditions.
And you already shared a little bit, like what inspired you to get into this. Yes? Yeah? Or do you want to share a little more on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said, actually, Lisa, that, your mother experienced eczema, because eczema is a very common skin condition in my family, actually. So I have xerosis. So I mentioned I have severe dry skin. It's severe dry skin. So I have xerosis. But quite a few family members now I know that they have eczema, but at the time we just wasn't sure why their skin looked that way because we were not aware of the different clinical presentations of the disease. So this project is actually very personal projects as well, because it's so important to be aware of the clinical presentation of the disease, as we discussed earlier, and just having the ability to be part of a team and a brand, La Roche-Posay, who's committed to bring new knowledge on different skin conditions that impacting different people. That was something quite exciting for me to work on. Yeah. So there's a personal touch here for me as well.
Personal touch.
Think about severe dry skin or people with eczema, individuals with eczema, and how that can affect their daily life. Yeah. I mean, it is dry skin, but people can feel itchy. It might affect their self-esteem. And it's great that we're doing this research to help combat that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously you did, a lot of research in this space. Like, I'm just so curious, about, obviously you can't share like explicitly what the patients or the participants said in these studies, but like any overarching things that they said while they were experiencing, a skincare routine consistently?
Yes, and it's actually very similar to what you just described, the impact of the quality of life. And so I think, to your point, it's such important research that we were able to do, and also the importance of raising awareness on how certain skin diseases, no matter the level of severity, can impact someone's quality of life based on the symptoms.
I love that. Yeah. So I'm on a mission to help my own dry skin. What would you recommend or suggest to our listeners if they're also battling with dry skin or eczema?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my same advice. First, avoid anything that is harsh to your skin. It can be a perfume, a detergent, a soap, clothes even. What is your skin exposed to on a regular basis? It may act as a trigger. Yeah. So first, identify what is the thing that makes your skin more sensitized. What type of products or t-shirts or clothes that makes your skin a little bit irritated. Use or start using or continue to use gentle cleansers and moisturizers that are designed to provide your skin barrier more strength. And then the second advice is really try to identify the triggers. Is it stress? Is it a lack of sleep? Is it food? I love spicy food, although I cannot take spicy food.
Yeah, and I love a hot shower.
And I like a hot shower, but
it's probably not the best for me.
Yes, depending on your skin, right? So I think identify some of those triggers and try to minimize them if possible. Yeah.
I mean, as we're speaking today, I am now feeling like I'm really dry on my back. I'm starting to itch a little bit here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am not moisturizing on a daily basis. So I feel like that's one of the messages that I am receiving today is just moisturize, Kelly.
Be consistent.
Be consistent. Maybe use a gentle cleanser, maybe have that in your shower, be ready for winter is here. And, we were saying seasonality can affect things too, or weather. So just be consistent. That's what I'm kind of getting. What are you getting from today's episode?
For me, it was, I know not everyone's going to journal, but what a great idea to write it down, write your symptoms down on what that day you used, because there might be a pattern. Something in there is disturbing your peace. So maybe taking note of that, and that way you can take that list with you to the doctor, to the dermatologist, to see if you guys can correlate what the trigger might be.
Yeah, those are great points. And I have to say, I had the same epiphany when I did the clinical study that I'm actually more drier than I had anticipated. But yeah, absolutely, moisturization, consistency is key, and I love what you guys said, that journaling and just being intention. Important.
Journaling does help you be more intentional. It turns your unhappy days into happy days. No.
Happy faces.
Happy faces. Yeah, I love that.
Love it.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you for joining us again. And thank you all for joining us here at Skin Goals. We'll see you next time.